go. All right. This we kind of like did already allude to a little bit, where when you do write your essay, you want to give them something. I don't want to say like brand new that they've never read before, but don't write something where you are going into age-old topics that everyone has probably covered or will cover, and certainly don't worry about flattering the university. I think we kind of did the mimic Sean Nolan letter where Hail's been, tailgating every Saturday and all this kind of stuff. If they go to that school that you're writing to, chances are they probably like it. They wanted to go there, so you don't have to tell them what's so great about it. But when you get into topics, whether it be evils of terrorism or, like right now, there might be something dealing with like firearms, commitment involved in any kind of profession, not just being a doctor, those are probably things that they have certainly read over and over and over again. And it's not to say there's not merit to those kind of topics, but the chances of you leaving an impression with them with a topic that everyone else has covered numerous times, kind of lessen. So you want to bring something new to the table, not just what you think it is that they want to hear. So don't go overboard with that flattery. Been sincere. If you are able to take something that might not otherwise seem all that extraordinary, but look at it in a new perspective, that can be a nice way to start. I think, again, some people get concerned sitting here, I haven't done anything remarkable in my life. What in the world am I going to write about? Jobs that you have, if you babysit, and experiences that you had with trying to get mac and cheese scraped off the kitchen ceiling before the parents got back. Those kind of little instances that might not seem to be college essay worthy or significant can still be a way to get some pretty good information about yourself across to the board. So it doesn't have to be when Grace went to the Grand Canyon and she realized how she's just a little minuscule speck in this big world of all this stuff. It doesn't have to be some kind of exotic trip that took place, but just simple everyday events, tasks, routines that you go through, but still end up having some kind of effect upon you, can be a nice topic to kind of start with. Remember, we did mention this, you're not writing to that guy, you're writing to probably a grad assistant who's 21, 22, closer in age to you than they would be to me. That doesn't mean that we want you to start like writing text message essays or anything like that, but don't feel like you have to go super formal, sophisticated, use this overly intellectual jargon kind of vocabulary that Mrs. Burns taught you in language enrichment. You can certainly go with your everyday voice. Allie, you're asking about to be verbs, where you're not going to lose credit for me with to be verbs. I doubt that the person reading your college essay is going to have, get very upset that the term was or has shown up. One thing that you also can use that normally we wouldn't would be contractions. So rather than going I am, if Grace were to write I'm or isn't, that's going to be perfectly fine. And when you're dealing with the 650 word count limit, if you can take two words and combine them into one, then by all means you would want to go ahead and do it. So there's kind of towing that line between being too informal, too colloquial. But if it's your natural voice, it sounds like you or it reads as you, that's probably the voice that you want to go with. But don't worry about, am I picking a topic that is too, current that this person's not really going to be aware about? The person reading your essay is probably going to be just in tune, just in touch with any topic that you want to cover as much as anyone else would be. Nice little bow tie though. Snazzy. Maybe. Thank you, remote. No offense. This is one that I get kind of worried about sometimes. Don't come across as being too condescending. And it's not that I think you're going to go in your essay, the person reading this is a total nitwit, I am much smarter than you. But what folks will sometimes try to do to set themselves apart is kind of belittle other folks. So not necessarily just kind of writing all Americans are conforming cowards and I am so much better, but sweeping generalizations about classmates in general. Unlike most teenagers, I care about our world. Who's going to come across as being a little cynical, a little condescending. Everyone else in my school doesn't realize the importance of college education and stuff like that. I think people will write phrases that they expect to be harmless, but it ends up kind of being condescending where you're belittling other people to try to separate yourself. Now, if you have a specific instance where, you're taking a look at, not by names, but, kind of compare yourself to one or two individuals and how maybe you were recognizing something that they didn't, that's fine. But stay away from all students, all teenagers, all Americans, everyone else in the whole entire world except for me. Those are the types of things that you want to try to avoid. If you write something and you're thinking there's a chance that this might be considered offensive, there's a good chance it probably is, so don't include it. If some little red flag, or if your mother or grandmother's voice is in your head going, Kobe, don't write this, then you probably should not. I think we've already kind of hit this point that you're not writing a resume, so you're not repeating information that could be found elsewhere in the application. So GPA, SAT, ACT scores, if you took them on Saturday, AP exam scores, those would be things you don't need to include. If it's really coming down to, that Lindsay's going to make it into the school if she got a 3.8, but not if she got a 3.79, they'll already have the information there that they need. You don't have to include that, in your you're not going to have an MLA heading, but in your letterhead, where you have Lindsay Edmondson and then that 4.2718648.5 on and on and on GPA. Nice job. But you don't have to include that over and over again. And certainly don't worry about going into every single activity you ever had. During my junior year, I played first singles on the tennis team, served on the student council, maintained a B+ average, traveled to France, and worked at a cheese factory. If you worked at a cheese factory, I would like to hear about it, and that could be a good example to get into. Mr. Franks worked at an ice cream factory. So if you have APOC next year, you can learn about his ice cream exploits.
Was it Ben and Jerry's?
No, it was
Did he slow churn ice cream?
what was it? It was Pittsburgh. Reinhold's, I think, was the company. I remember the factory was over towards Manchester, but it's not there anymore. My best job was pulling roadkill across the turnpike to get it out of the way so that Justin's car or his mother's car wouldn't get damaged. Oh well.
His car's always broken and he's always talking about it, so.
Now again, there could be an event about your time on the tennis team. There could be something that happened with student council. There could be something certainly with that trip to France or that job that you have that could be a great example to get into. And again, mention babysitting, maybe helping coaching youth sports, things like that. You can go into detail about one of those events, but just don't feel the need that you have to explain every single little thing that has ever happened to you. And the main reason for that is you want to make sure that you maintain that you are very focused. It's not going to be the whole story of your life, but it's going to be a small glimpse of it. And really, it's even probably going to be a glimpse of that glimpse. You're getting into an experience that happened, but you're not going to get into the whole entire rundown and details of that experience. You're jumping into it right away. Mentioned about babysitting, and little Gracie is babysitting. Did you ever babysat? Who?
Jameson. I don't know. We babysat together a lot.
You and Allie?
Yeah, neighbors. So we babysat.
So they needed both of you for this
Well,
one?
they're like. Well, no, there were
Is this a
two
terror?
babies. They were 1 year apart, and one of them was 1, and the other one was 2.
They're very independent, so you can't leave the room with one of them, the other one gets angry.
So one of you would be on 1-year-old duty, and the other one would be on 2-year-old
Yeah,
duty.
we'd switch each time.
Good system.
Jameson and
Dempsey.
Dempsey.
That sounds like a long process.
And their dog's named Fonzie.
Fonzie.
Jameson.
So who usually watches Dempsey, or is it pretty even?
Even.
Okay.
Allie loves Dempsey.
So Allie starts going into detail about this. She could just simply start about her time with Dempsey or whatnot. You're not going to go, so there's a neighbor, in our community, in our neighborhood, that a friend and I, or at least a classmate, if friend's not right, both have to babysit because the two kids are independent. You're wasting 125 words before you're actually getting into what the content would be. But you could certainly jump into it right away that I didn't realize that a person could feed a baby, change a diaper, and clean up the mess on the wall all at the same time, and then start getting into those details that would take place. So you're really going into a very small glimpse, and there's something about that experience that has caused, could be a realization, could be a change in outlook, could be a euphoric moment of, oh my goodness, this is what I am meant to do. There is going to be Allie and Gracie's daycare all over Pittsburgh, or I don't think I'm meant to have kids, and then go into all the details about how that has happened. So you want to just make sure that it is focused and specific. There could be something from a family tradition that you have, whether it be a Christmas Eve Mass, a Yom Kippur service, some kind of Memorial Day picnic that you always have. It could be about an interesting meal that took place where you had boiled tongue for the first time, or octopus on Easter, or maybe it is something about just scooping ice cream at Brewster's, Ben & Jerry's, wherever that case may be. One little event can certainly give you enough stuff to write about.
Can we include anything about like our major, like, cause like I want to be a teacher and like babysitting and doing stuff with little kids is helpful.
Yeah,
Are we allowed to?
sure. Yeah, and because, and the nice thing is that would, like, you could go with that babysitting moment where, and don't feel obligated to tie it into your major. But if it is a natural connection that babysitting let me, help me figure out that early childhood care is where I want to be, or elementary teacher, or after babysitting I knew, boy, they need to at least be in 7th grade before I'm going to deal with them. That's perfectly fine. I wouldn't take something that how working at Dairy Queen and doing the soft serve ice cream machine let me know that, the math classroom is where I'm meant to be. There's probably not much of a connection that would be taking place there. Who knows, maybe you'd be able to figure it out. But if it is pertinent to the major, then yeah, by all means you could go ahead and do that. Don't feel forced to tie in the major for the simple fact that you might be undeclared, and there's a good chance you might end up changing it as well. On Thursday, we're going to take a look at trying to eliminate wordiness, and it can be a little difficult where you're used to writing lengthier essays, or maybe you are trying to vary some syntax and get into detail about events that happened within a book. Where here we're just trying to keep it simple to the point. So it might be just a simple, unnecessary phrase like "in society today" when you could write "now." Now, is "in society today" going to break an essay? No. And I'm not going to, like, a score is not going to go down from, you could have had a 50, but you're in society today, so now that's dropped you down to a 45. But if you had like 10 such phrases where they're 3 words, they're 4 words, where you could get it down to 1 word or 2, you add those up, now you're starting to give yourself an extra 20 or 30 words, which could be able to allow you to add in more detail. So short sentences can be more forceful because they are direct. They can be a little bit more to the point. It could be just cutting something down like this, or it could be a little bit more of a wordier example where over the years it's been pointed out to me by my parents, friends, and teachers, and I've even noticed this about myself as well, that I am not the neatest person in the world. All you would have to do is write, you could go, I'm not the neatest person in the world. You could go, I'm a slob, I'm messy, but you could probably take, I don't know what the word count would be, 30-some words down to 2 or 3. You got a contraction, they're just going to count that as 1 word, a slob, there you go, 3 words to the point. And the nice thing is if you were to describe someone as, they're a slob, you get a pretty good sense that they really are not organized whatsoever. So it even could be a little bit stronger than just going, I'm unorganized, I'm messy, I'm a slob. We got a little stronger connotation taking place. Maybe that's an obstacle that Jake has to overcome, and therefore that ends up being like, prompt number 3 that he ends up writing about, or prompt 2 or 5 or whatever the case may be. No cliches, no cliches, no cliches. It's not so much judging a book by a cover or, idiomatic phrases like raining cats and dogs, but it's more of phrases that tend to show up over and over and over again with college essays. Cutting edge isn't really happening so much anymore. That ended up being more like a 10-year ago type thing. But things like, I learned my lesson, always learning from mistakes, I can make a difference, engineering is my passion, I no longer take friends or loved ones for granted. Those tend to be kind of catch-all phrases that when people don't know what to write, they write those things. So these would be ones that I would jot down and basically try to go, I want to stay away from this. These would be ones that, kind of think of these, Allie, as the to be verbs, where if we do see, I know what it is to triumph over adversity when we're doing that obstacle prompt, that would be one where maybe go, I think you could word this a little bit differently. Because again, more and more people are applying to schools than ever before. More and more essays are coming in. They're reading hundreds of these a day. If you start reading the same stuff over and over again, it just kind of goes into that kind of pile that I'm not really worried about. And we want to try to get from the average, typical pile to this is one that's kind of leaving a little bit of an imprint on me. Lessons that are useful both in and out of the classroom or, on the field and outside of it, those would be things that people will kind of get into quite a bit as well. And it's not that all sporting cliches are necessarily going to be bad, but they're probably going to be common ones that are going to come up multiple times. So be aware of those. Babysitting opened my eyes to a whole new world. Which one's older, Jameson or Dempsey?
Jameson.
Is he 2 now, or are we up to like?
Jameson.
Do you still babysit for them? Still? So they prefer her to you?
Well,
Or your rates are too high?
no, I just typically am not home all day at once.
So you ignore them or avoid them.
They text both of us about it and ask who's around, and I usually don't.
So Allie is raking in the money. Good for her.
I have my
Examples of where these cliches could kind of start to work their way in. If you have someone, whether dealing with a marathon or cross country, as I finished the race, I realized I had learned the value of hard work and appreciated the fact that I could accomplish anything if I set my mind to it. Or as I finished the course or I took my final, I realized I could do anything if I set my mind to it. Working in this atmosphere made me appreciate the value of diversity, the importance of teamwork. If someone is within a team sport or an ensemble cast, whether it be, could be music as well besides just theater, those are things that will tend to pop up. As the young child embraced me in gratitude, little Demi came up and gave me a big hug. I discovered the true value of making a difference in people's lives, and Allie decided to become a teacher. Or that summer in New York truly broadened my horizons. I think the place where folks are most apt to use these is probably when you're trying to come up with like a summary statement as to why was this moment so important. Well, it broadened my horizons. I realized the importance of teamwork, whatever that case may be. I don't think you're going to use these in the main paragraph, but it could be more so as you start to get towards the end. So make sure that you are leaving upon them an impression that you want, not something where you are just kind of running through the mill. Hey, this will sound good. I think they'll like this. That'll work. Value of hard work, value of diversity, importance of teamwork. Those can still be good topics to write about. Just avoid kind of going into that general statement about them that folks have read over and over and over again. What was it working as a team, trying to watch 2 kids that you actually did understand that you did not, grasp before? Or it could be some kind of science fair project, whatever the case may be. So it's not that you can have to ignore these topics, but just don't start to write that pre-packaged generic kind of wording, phrasing that they're going to be so accustomed to seeing and reading. There used to be a prompt years ago where it was write about a significant quote or song lyric. Thankfully, they took that one out. Because folks would start choosing these big, lengthy quotes, and that counts towards your essay. so you were knocking out, 50 words before you got to get going. If there is some kind of quote, there's a song lyric, there's a line from a poem, "So It Goes" has changed your world. Yes, you can still write about those things, but don't include a quotation for the sake of they want to hear Ben Franklin's words, or they want, a song lyric coming from the Beatles, John Lennon, whomever. If the quote's going to tie into what you're trying to do, and it's going to make your essay better, then go ahead and use it, but don't include a quote just because I think that's going to sound good, and that would be something that they want to hear. You only have 650 words. Some prompts that you look at for other schools might even give you less. Why take words away from you when you're already on a limited count? So it goes would at least only be 3. I am what I am. You could write a whole essay about that one. That one would be okay. The horror. It's only, that'd be 4 words. After reading Heart of Darkness, I realized I was reading my autobiography.
I've delved into my bond and found out, wow, I am a mess.
The screen froze on us. That's why we're stuck here.
Just drop. Just take that chair. This presentation. This is my favorite. I just watched that.
All right, this one kind of goes along with the cliches as using that prepackaged, predictable, generic kind of statements. And this kind of borderline flattery too. I chose Grove City because Grove City is committed to learning and I want to learn. Learning is important. You have a couple things going on. Number one, it's just kind of basic flattery. There's not anything going on to it. Also, you're begging the question, circular reasoning. You're just basically restating the same thing over and over again. This is that history test question when you have to give what are 3 effects of Reconstruction and you can only think of one thing and you keep rewriting it. Basically, it's clear that you think learning is important. But this, again, would just kind of be filler text as opposed to an actual idea that you're trying to do. Some of you fall in love with control or right-click on a word because you type in a term and go, wait a minute, there's got to be a fancy word in that one out there that I can use. Or Shift F7 usually is the shortcut on the keyboard. Use your own voice. Don't feel like you have to thesaurus your words. If it is a appropriate word and it's a more larger word, fine. But don't use big fancy words for the sake of just using big fancy words. When people start substituting words they're not familiar with, there's a better chance they're going to be misused. It could detract from the essay because it could kind of break up the tone or the style, the voice that you have. Again, that's not saying that you should write LOL or BTW and stuff like that, but you can certainly go with what is going to be your best voice. They can tell if it's coming from whether it's a thesaurus like Rose or a dictionary.com as opposed to this is a student's writing. So an effective writer, you're going to choose the best word, not necessarily the biggest, lengthiest, longest, most sophisticated sounding one. Sometimes simple, to the point, direct can just be as effective as anything else. And as mentioned, you're not writing an email or a text message, so make sure that you certainly stay away from those. You're not going into Newspeak for 1984 with double plus good. And some of these terms like very, a lot, cool, awesome, nice, they're just kind of generic. So try to vary it up at least a little bit, but still sounding with your own natural kind of voice. It can be personal, but it shouldn't be overly casual. Don't plagiarize, don't plagiarize, don't plagiarize. Yes, people plagiarize. Don't be one of them. Don't spend money to plagiarize. And you don't want DDI written on your essay because then they decide that Daddy did it. Or maybe Demi did it if she got hold of the little word processor and typed away because she's a pretty smart kid. Keep in mind, if they think that you plagiarized, they're not going to call you up and go, Kobe, we're kind of thinking that this doesn't look so good, there's not going to be the ability to defend yourself. It's just going to go into the big red X pile, at which point you won't be attending that school or university. So stay away from it. And along with this, that would also kind of be part of the reason why don't make stuff up, don't exaggerate, just go with what happened. That's going to be good enough. Once you kind of start to overly exaggerate or exaggerate even at all, I think that's when you start getting a better chance of a red flag going up. And again, you're not going to have a conference with them about it, so you don't want to leave anything up for question. This you don't have to worry about for the Common App because multiple schools certainly pull from the same essay. But if you are applying to schools that don't use the Common App, Pitt, for example, does not use the Common App, you don't want to answer one of their questions and then go, you know what, that question's pretty similar to this one that I'm using for Ohio State. I'll just send the same thing. If schools, especially within close proximity or with Northwestern and Duke similar programs, if they know what each other's questions are, they can start to tell that this doesn't really sound like our prompt. I think they just kind of took the same one and sent it off. So don't take the lazy shortcut out of it. You will probably have to write multiple essays. You'll do your Common App. You'll probably have some other essays going out to other schools. Some schools might require multiple essays depending upon the different programs you're trying to get into.
If they like are two different groups and they're just like on the map, I know it's like better to make notes, but like
Like for the Common App? So when you fill out your Common App application, you fill it all online and basically you just attach your essay. So if you have schools that are accepting Common App, there will be multiple schools that are going to look at that same essay. And I mean, there you're perfectly fine. This would be more for the schools that aren't using Common App. We don't want Common App because we want you to tailor, your answer to this question. If you took that Common App essay and then tried to make that square peg fit in the round hole of their question, that's what we're running an issue. But you're not going to have to answer all 6 or 7 Common App essays to make each school happy that's using the Common App. They acknowledge that those questions are good enough for us. That's perfectly fine. And along with these things, not only sending a school to the to a different one, make sure you have the right name for the right school. So don't go University or Duke University is where I want to go, and then send that to North Carolina, Chapel Hill. They're not going to be too happy about it. At least I wouldn't think. Proofread, proofread, proofread. It's not a TWA, meaning it is not a rough draft. They're looking at this as being a final copy, so there's been some thought, it's been polished and whatnot. Grammatical errors could be a little bit of an issue, especially with just carelessness. Forgetting an I can be a little bit of a pain. Or if you substitute the wrong word because you are relying on spell checker, after you graduate from high school, I plan to work for a nonprofit, or Daniel was my best friend, might not necessarily be so good. So those types of things, look over. Effect, affect words. A lot being 2 words, not 1. Beside, besides, those commonly confused words would certainly be things to look at. I would say, whether it be TWA or take home, lose, commonly confused, effect, affect. Beginning has been spelled in like 10 different ways throughout the course of the year. Definitely, differently, defiantly, all of those things have kind of been confused. So just make sure you look for those things, you get all your spelling right. Don't let some little mistake like that end up, costing you a little bit of this. So rough draft for Friday. Our laptops. Wednesday, Thursday, we'll go over some stuff. Hopefully, help you out with it. You don't have any other meetings, writing, anything else going on. It's just about Common App for Friday.